Hi everybody, very welcome to yet another live stream here on the Mentour Pilot channel. As always, I hope you're doing absolutely fantastic. Now, I am going to try to get a hold of my live screen here because I forgot to engage that before I started this, but I'm hoping that you can all see me anyway. Today I have another guest with us. It's so nice to be able to welcome Rosita from the Pilot Bambi YouTube channel. And if you haven't heard about her yet, it might be because she started her YouTube channel like literally maybe 3 or 4 months ago. I don't know exactly. I'll ask about that later on. But it's been growing like crazy, and there's a good reason that it has been growing. It's because she is doing an absolutely awesome job. Like her videos are so inspiring. It's so nice to watch it because it actually makes me feel like it reminds me of why I wanted to start flying in the first place. So I know that a lot of you guys have been asking for her to be on the video. And I managed to get a hold of her, and she was kind enough to be to want to come in. But we're still going to wait a little bit because I want some of you guys to come in. It might be that some are still watching some ads going on. I know that happens from time to time. And while we're waiting, I am actually going to have to try to get into so I can see that you guys in the background here. Otherwise, I won't be getting any super chat questions. This is a rookie mistake deluxe because normally I have the YouTube screen in the background so I can see you. But if you just walk with me for a second, I'll be ready to go. Rock and roll any second here now. Cool. Let's see here. It's just a day of firsts for me. I tried to call Rosita up a couple of minutes back, and for some reason the feed didn't go through either. So it's just one of those things, I guess. Let's see if we can find this thing. There we go. Well, it looks like I am up and running anyway, and now I can finally see you guys as well. So that's a really good way to start this off. And I can see that there's loads of people asking questions already. Well, that's great. So without further ado, I want to introduce Rosita from the Pilot Bambi channel. And if you can hear that, that's my dogs now that's barking because someone is coming in through the front door. So Patchy and Molly is here, as they always tend to be. So let's see. Rosita, how are you?
Hi, hello. Thank you for having me. How are you?
I am really stoked to have you on the channel. You're one of the ones that have been most requested actually in the chat, which speaks a lot about how quickly you have grown in the YouTube world.
It's been crazy. I mean, you asked me a few weeks ago even, we had some contact, and we talked about when I started my YouTube channel. And I actually started, I think, the day before I posted my day in the life of a skydive pilot video in St. Martin, which was in March. That's like, the time has flown.
Yeah, well, it was kind of a smart move to start your YouTube channel in March, because I think there's been a lot of people that's been having very little to do, and that gives a chance for someone to come, because it is really hard to kind of punch through all of the noise out on YouTube. You really need to have something really good for that to happen. And I looked at that first video. I think it has over 350,000 views already.
Yeah, crazy.
Which is, yeah, that is properly insane. Now, guys, if you haven't seen any of Rosita's work so far, then in the description of this live video, there is a link to her YouTube channel where you can go in, and I think there's only 8 videos or something to choose from.
Yeah. But, and I can't really I haven't made them any longer than 15 minutes, I think. So yeah, you'll be done with all of them quite quickly, I think.
and guys, like the first video that you put up, what was the name of the first video?
Day in the life of a Caribbean skydive pilot.
Yeah, I think that caught the eye of a lot of people. And the fact is that sometimes when you go out on YouTube and you see something like that, you click on it, and quite quickly you realize that this is a bit boring, I'm not going to watch it. But in fact, that when I saw that first, when you contacted me actually, and I went in and I checked out your channel. And I thought that someone who's starting off her channel, like how good can this possibly be? And it is great. Like it really captured that spirit of why you want to start to fly in the first place, and how cool that this job can be. Even if you're not an airline pilot, but you're actually flying. It was a Cessna Skyvan, was it, or a Cessna Caravan or something that you flew?
The one I was flying there was a 206.
That's a
Cessna
206.
206. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I want to have you on here on the channel for a couple of different reasons. You have managed to do your training in a fairly cheap way. That's what I've understood from your channel so far. And I know that there's a lot of people here watching this channel who wants to know if you can do it on the cheap. Like, can you actually get through, and how cheap can you actually get it? So that's something that we're going to get to in a second. But then I want to talk about your goals as well, which are slightly different than the other people that I've had on the channel so far. Before we start, I want to tell everyone who's watching here that we will be taking questions. The way that this normally works is that me and Rosita will have like a great cup of coffee, discussing stuff with each other or drink water. So it might take a while before the first questions from you can come in, but we will definitely ask them. And if you have something that you think is really important that you want to say, then use the super chat question, because that will highlight it. And it's already over 600 people here watching, which means that there's going to be loads and loads and loads of questions. So if you have something that you want me to ask, or if you want to ask me something, then use the super chat question, and I will be taking questions from the other people as well. So at what age did you start at your journey, Rosita?
I think it started around the age of 4 or 5. It's super young. I mean, that's where my passion for aviation kind of started. Like I explained in one of my videos, I grew up in Tanzania in East Africa, and my dad was flying a Cessna 182 there. He had his PPL, and it was just amazing flying through Eastern Africa, flying to Zanzibar. It was such a crazy experience as a kid to experience all of that, and obviously traveling a lot between the Netherlands and Tanzania on holiday. I really kind of was, how do I explain that? I was just so interested in this world of aviation, and especially the humanitarian air service side of it. There were a lot of aircraft from the UN and from different, like the Red Cross, all these humanitarian air service organizations that were doing a lot of work in Africa, and that really interested me a lot. A lot of Cessna Caravans flying in East Africa, and when I saw those with the turbines, I was like, wow, that's what I want to fly one day. So that's kind of stuck in the back of my head for a really long time. And as I grew a bit older, I would join my dad and my parents on more flights. And kind of that freedom of flight, which a lot of people can agree with me, which is just amazing, that really struck me. And the adventure and kind of the challenge of flying, that's what really caught my attention.
Yeah.
And then fast forward a few years, my parents moved back to the Netherlands for our schooling. And my dad actually drew a big circle around the airport in Hilversum, my local airfield, and said, we're going to live like at least minimum or maximum of 5 kilometers away from that airport, so that if Rosita wants to fly, she can start as at the gliding club. And that's what I did. So at age 15, I became a member of the gliding club. Went solo in the first 3 weeks of my flight training there. It was going really quickly. We were flying every day. And that's when I kind of kickstarted my real aviation journey. And that's where it all began.
Cool. So 15 gliding pilots, and then you had to wait for another 3 years or so before you got into your the motorized flying.
Yeah.
I mean, flying in Africa is something that I've always been fascinated with. I've never had the guts to do it myself, though. But like, is it as crazy as people say that it is down there? Like, because the way that I'm, like, my colleagues that explain it to me now, albeit they probably flew 30 years ago down in Africa, but it's basically like, dude, you just go fly, like, that's it.
Well, I actually did my PPL in South Africa, and the general aviation community in South Africa is amazing. It's really big. There's all these tiny airfields. I have a Airfields 3 that's like this thick, filled with all the airfields of Southern Africa. So it's really accommodating. There's a lot of airfields that are open for general aviation. it's just especially in South Africa where I did most of my hours, it's so diverse. You have mountains, you have the sea, you have all the different climates, and the flying is just so beautiful. And I think that the flying that I would do with my father a long time ago, you would have whole stretches where there was no air traffic control and you were just on your GPS. Good luck. And that was also quite some years ago. So I think it really depends where you are in Africa.
Yeah, I guess it's a huge
honestly, if you compare it to Europe, if you look at the Dutch airspace or the Belgian airspace, it's a lot easier in Africa. But you just want to get lost there, of course.
Yeah, you know, that's what I mean. Like it seems to be a lot of uncontrolled airspace, and there's a lot of little strips and places to go to. So you actually went back into Africa then to get your PPL.
Yeah, and I think it's quite interesting to explain this part of my whole story. When I was in high school, I already knew that I wanted to become a humanitarian aid service pilot. I wanted to work for an NGO, and I really had that clear mindset of, okay, that's what I want to do. But at the same time, I was at the glider club where a lot of the youth have that goal and ambition to become an airline pilot. So my friends were looking at the KLM Flight Academy or the European pilot training schools throughout Europe and the US. And you know, when you're 15 or 16, you really kind of want to you kind of hear the stories of your friends and think, oh wow, maybe that's something for me as well. So I debated whether or not to do that. But quite quickly, my parents also told me, hey, if you do a ab initio ATPL training, a really big flight school, that's great if you want to become an airline pilot. And even if you get a loan at the bank, you'll be able to pay that back maybe with the earnings of as an airline pilot. But as a bush pilot, doing a ATPL training at one of these big schools might not be the best economical decision. So that's kind of when my parents said, okay, if you want to become a pilot, look at the other options, because I knew that I would have to have a commercial pilot license and I would have to have my instrument rating, but there were all these other ways of getting that flight training done without going to a really, really expensive full package flight school.
Yeah. Yeah. This is like people are saying smart parents in the chat here, and the fact is that yes, but this probably comes back to the fact that your father had flying experience and he'd flown there, because what they're saying is absolutely true. Like there are different ways of doing things depending on what your ultimate goal is, and if your ultimate goal is to actually go and do humanitarian flights in Africa, well then that type of experience that you're getting by doing your licenses there is going to be crucial. Like if they would leave me to go fly in Congo or whatever it might be, I would be completely lost because I am so dependent on my very structured airspace structure, and ATC is doing exactly this and I know exactly what to expect. But there might be a completely different skill set that you need to have. So kudos to your parents for directing you down that path.
And honestly, that's something that I really want to incorporate in my YouTube channel, because I've really had that benefit of my parents already knowing quite a lot about the structure of PPL, CPL, ATPL. Along the way, we learned a lot. But I'm so aware that maybe the knowledge that I have, other people don't know about. Like what are the options of building hours as a skydive pilot or as a scenic flight pilot? So I kind of want to share my experiences, because you never know what aspiring pilots might learn from it and take from it, and maybe it'll help them in their decision making.
Yeah, and the like the history keeps, or like what's going on in the world keeps changing, obviously, and what was correct, the correct way of doing things 3 months ago might not be the correct way of doing things now. So like I think that you have a very, very important voice, and it's very good that you go through and you show people that there are different ways to do things than going to NLS or whatever it might be. So I'm really looking forward to hearing you on your channel explain a little bit more about that, because I think there is a big need for it, and from someone who's actually been there fairly recently as well. Like you're what, 22?
I'm 22, yeah.
22 years old. So you basically just done this. You have a few years of getting hours of hour building. Awesome hour building, I might add. But it means that you're there now. You know exactly how you did it. How did you find the training? You did down in South Africa, did you?
Yeah.
How did you find the training?
I did my PPL in South Africa because yeah, my parents said, okay, you want to become a pilot? Well, make sure you actually enjoy it. I was like, of course I will enjoy it, which I ended up doing. But it was really, really crucial for me to start off with the private pilot license training. I went to a flight school called 43 Air School in Port Alfred.
I've actually heard about them. Yes, because I have quite a few people from South Africa who's following the channel, and they have been asking about that. So good. Give me some reviews.
It's the apparently I think it now is the biggest ab initio ATPL flight training in the Southern Hemisphere, or that's what they promote. I had such a good time because it was basically just integrated ATPL flight training school. We lived on campus, students from all over the world. So a lot of people from the Seychelles, from Kenya, a few Europeans. So it was such an amazing mix of people. And I was there just for my PPL. So, I mean, I was having a great time, did a lot of flying. I think the most amazing thing about 43 Air School is they have an ATO, like an AMO, it's like a maintenance engineering training school on campus.
Yeah.
So there are engineers in training at the flight school, and their fleet is massive. So one day I had a 6 a.m. flight, I think, and I walked to the plane, and my nose wheel was there was no air in it, no pressure. And they literally said, okay, choose one of the other 4 that you can take, because there was so many aircraft that I could just choose from. So there was at no point in my flight training was I did I have any delay because of aircraft problems. And that was just really nice. And you learn so much, because I had a question about how the cylinder head temperature gauge worked, and they took me to the big hangar, and they explained it for an hour, just explaining how it all worked. And that was such a crucial part of my flight training, especially because one day I want to fly in the Congo or in Central Africa, and I want to know how my plane works. And yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, yeah, that's awesome. And the thing is as well that when you go close, we have the aviation bug. Like, we want to be sticking rather flying the thing, but you'll find that the engineers have the aviation bug, but from the technical point of view, which means that they will be giving you like an hour's briefing about how that gauge works, which is awesome.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
just the comfortable feeling of being at a flight school that has such an amazing fleet. And I just had a really, really good time there. Unfortunately, in the time that I was there, a lot of people were telling me that it wouldn't be smart of me to do my entire commercial flight training there, because I wouldn't be able to get a job in South Africa because of the visa regulation. And at the same time, people were telling me, okay, if you wanted to get your CPL and you have a European your European citizenship, it might be better to do an EASA license anyway.
Yeah.
I think I also have enough explaining to do to all the people watching at some point, the difference between an EASA license and an ICAO South African license, and you have FAA. There are, like, when you're doing a modular training, you have to be really careful that you really research all of that very much.
Believe me, these questions, they come up all the time, and there are a lot of ways that you can go wrong when you're doing it a modular way, because you're not being spoon-fed the training, and people are not thinking for you. You need to think for yourself. But it's interesting. Did you have to, so you only took your PPL down there?
Yeah.
Did you have to then convert that when you got back to the Netherlands again?
That was a really tiresome situation. I had my PPL at 50 hours. I thought, oh, I'm the best pilot. Of course, I was far from it. But when you just finish your PPL, on top of the world. And I came to Holland, and I said, okay, I want to convert my license. I want to build some hours here and start with the ATPL theory. And they said, no, you can't. You need to either do 100 hours total time and do 2 EASA PPL exams, or you need to do your entire PPL in the Netherlands. And I thought, oh, wow, I did not see that coming. As you said, you're not being spoon-fed all the information. So here is me sharing the tips. So I did some research, and I basically concluded it's best for me to go back to South Africa and build the extra 50 hours and come back. Then I'll have 100 hours total time, do the 2 exams, and then I'll do the license conversion. So it was quite a hassle to have it done. But those 50 hours in South Africa completely changed my mindset about everything. I mean, it's the first time you have a plane by yourself. You have no instructor. You just have your PPL, and yeah, it's flying through South Africa. I did 50 hours in 3 weeks. It was crazy.
Yeah, no, that sounds awesome. Like 50 hours if I had a Cessna 150, when I had my PPL and I had 50 hours to spend down there, I could think of a couple of things that I would love to do. So
Yeah.
that sounds great. But it is a really good point for anyone who's watching this now, because I get this question a lot, and that is, if you are going to go down the modular route and you're going to try this out, especially if you're going to go to different countries and do it, make sure that you have researched exactly the steps that you need to do. Because obviously the most common thing that people do are that they go over to the United States and they get their PPL, CPL, sometimes the whole batch in the States, and then they have European citizenship and they want to come back and they want to avail of the fact that you can actually get a cadet job here at 200 hours and jump into a 737 and fly. But then they realize that no, you have to convert your license, and they're different depending on how much experience you have, like you noticed.
Yeah.
So if you are going to do something like Rosita did, and you want to do this, and you don't want to find these things out later on, then talk to flight schools, like go to a flight school, for example, in Europe, and say that, listen, my plan is that I'm going to go to the States and I'm going to take this. What do I need to do in order to convert the licenses when I come back? And calculate that into your cost, right? Because it's going to cost a lot of money. It will. It's not going to be it's not going to be something that might stop you, but it might be another 10,000-15,000 euros sometimes if you have done the whole ATPL pack, IRME, and then you want to come back to it. It's more expensive than you think, actually. So good, and I'm feeding you some ideas for upcoming videos on your channel now, stuff that because it's like I can sit here and mansplain this, but I haven't actually done that myself. You have that, you know how to do it, and you know what kind of stuff that you came up across, so you should definitely do that.
Yeah.
I would love to.
And I think it's really nice because in these times, I mean, throughout my kind of gliding network, I recently made a video gliding with one of my friends from when we were 15. We did a cross country, and he is busy with a ab initio ATPL training, and I have some friends that just completed theirs, and or before Corona they finished. So I can kind of compare my recent story with friends of mine that have just completed their ab initio ATPL training. And the cool thing is it's all awesome. It's all fantastic.
Yeah.
And there's just so many opportunities. You just kind of have to choose what's best for you. I mean, maybe a flight training in South Africa is amazing for one person, but for the other person, it's just too much of a hassle to go there and maybe a bit scary. And that's okay. I mean, we're not all the same.
No.
So, yeah.
No, absolutely. No, I completely agree. Now, how much did the PPL cost you down there?
I think my PPL down there costs 6,500 euros with accommodation.
Ooh, that's cheap. I think, I don't know what, I haven't checked lately, but I think it's up to almost 10 in Europe, isn't it? Do you know?
I recently, well, I mean, I looked 2 years ago because a few friends of mine asked, and it is in the Netherlands, it is above the 10,000. And the reason why I really promote flying in South Africa and doing your training there is you have the benefit of really good weather if you're there at the right time, fuel over aircraft availability, and I just know a lot of people in the Netherlands that have taken a year for their PPL or 1.5 years, which is great. But if you want to do it quickly to have a steep learning curve, then in South Africa, I mean, you can do it in a couple of months.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So then you got your 100 hours and you got back to the Netherlands and you started converting your licenses over, and then you got your CPL in the Netherlands?
Yeah.
All right, cool.
So I had the PPL in 2017. I went there for a few months, got my PPL, came back, and that was in March. And then came back to Holland, had to do some work to earn some money again, and I was just working in a restaurant, and it was really fun, but I missed the flying, of course. So I was here, and then they told me that I had to do the 100 hours total time to be able to get my EASA PPL, and then I went back to South Africa in November 2017, and then in 2018 I started with the ATPL theory. So I had my PPL, could do some hour building in Holland, and then started with the ATPL theory. Okay, for a lot of people, they ask what's the difference between CPL and ATPL theory. In the Netherlands, it's literally, I think, 3 exams more for ATPL, but then you have everything, and it kind of encompasses everything that you need to know. And I thought, I'm studying anyway, I might as well do them all.
Yeah, there's no question. If you're going to apply after your training to any of the airlines in Europe, they are going to ask you to have frozen ATPL. And if you think about it, if you're sitting out there and you're thinking, well, this is an easier way to get through it, what you're facing is that at 1,500 hours, when it's time to upgrade your CPL to an ATPL, if you haven't done the license, if you haven't done those tests, then you have to sit down when you have a job and redo. I think you have to redo all 14 exam at the ATPL level in order to get that up. So either you sit down when you're studying and you do everything at once, and you have your frozen ATPL, which will then enable you to actually look for a job in the first place, or you're going to have to do that at some point later on and just redo the whole thing again. So yeah, anyone who's listening out there, you need to do the frozen ATPL. It's as easy as that.
Yeah.
Cool. So so how long did it take you? Then you had your CPL fixed fairly quickly, or did it take a lot of time since you had to do it in the Netherlands?
I started with the theory. I wanted to start beginning of 2018, and I was just working part-time because I wanted to save money for a future. That's the amazing thing about a modular training. You can work in between, earn some money for more hours and all of that. So I was doing the theory part-time, and I did it, or almost full-time. Maybe like 3/4 of my time was spent on it. And I did it online at an online distance learning course called Orbit. You have a few in Europe. You have Bristol and Oxford, I think. And it's basically just you get a package of all your 14 exams. You do the subjects. You get all the books or the online version. You get that whole like package, and then you have the time for yourself. You can decide how long you want to study for it, and then you have to do 80 hours of classical training. So that's at the Orbit school. They had an 80-hour in 2 weeks. We did classes every day, really intense, just to answer all your questions, and then you had to sign up for the actual exams. So I did everything by myself. Very intense. I didn't think it was difficult. I just thought it was a lot to know, and I did it in 9 months. So
that's good. That's quick going. I think 9 months is pretty much what it takes if you go full time learning in one of the integrated schools as well. That's generally how they do it. The first kind of like year is intense classroom learning, but and there should be a warning label on this as well, saying that not all people can do this. Like this is to do that type of studying requires a very, very strong mind, because you have to take it on yourself to do all of that reading yourself. And I mean, doing all the classroom training in only 2 weeks for all of the 14 exams, and then going to sit the exams and actually passing them, because remember, it is important to pass these ones. That is hard, very, very hard. So it might not suit everyone. It did obviously suit you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
But for everyone listening, you have to realize that there is some serious work that you need to put down here. So especially if you're thinking about doing this while you're working on the side to kind of earn money, really allocate the time and make sure that you have a good train schedule. And I have to ask you now, because I know there's a lot of people who ask me. So maths and physics, he keeps saying that you need a lot of maths and physics in order to get through the ATPL training. What did you think? Like how bad did you think that the maths and physics part of the ATPL exams were?
I think a lot of people get scared off for it because that at a ab initio flight training school, you get tested for your math and physics skill level. With me, the requirement to do the ATPL theory was that you had to have a PPL, and you do an interview. But when I started with it, it's so applied, all of it. It's applied math and physics to something that you're actually passionate about. I have to say, and I'm honest to everybody, I didn't like physics in high school at all. And I found it really frustrating because I couldn't really apply it to the real life situations. But in the ATPL subjects, it was like, oh wow, we're talking about aerodynamics, and we're talking about how aircrafts, like how they fly, and we're talking about turbines. So it's all these applied information, and math. You need to go into it understanding that you have to do a lot of navigating, and you need to use math in all these different parts of the flight training, and even as a pilot later on. But because it made so much sense in a real life example, it made it a lot more simple, actually.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's what I'm trying to say as well. Like, you need to understand trigonometry, for example, because if not, how are you going to fly? How are you going to calculate the DME arc? How long you have to fly? How much time you need to fly in a certain speed in order to complete the DME arc? Like, you have to, but they're all applied. It's not, you're not going to be, I think you're absolutely correct in that people think, when they think maths and physics, they see these maths and physics exams that they had during high school in front of them. They're sitting there with like long formulas in their head, and what they're actually looking at is something that's going to be more like, okay, here's the lift formula. This is how it's applied. How do you use this? Or here is your weight and balance sheet. You know, how much people can you sit in the back when you have this much of a momentum arm from those people up to your center of gravity. These are the kind of things that you will be using. So these are the things that you need to know. And if you haven't paid any attention during math and physics, you will not understand that. But you will, if you just listened and kind of understood it, you might. I mean, I was terrible at math, I still am. And the same, like physics, I thought was more interesting because I could apply it already in school. But math was not my strong suit, but I managed to get through it. So I think most people can, actually.
There's so much information, on YouTube, people explaining stuff, you explaining things about physics and math used in aviation, but you can really, really learn a lot by maybe watching videos is your type of way of learning, or reading. So you'll really get through it if you put yourself to it. Yeah.
Cool. All right. So people are saying that my microphone is low. Well, let's see if I can get the volume up a little bit. Anyway, so now I want to skip ahead a little bit to you all of a sudden appearing in the Caribbean. Yeah, because that like I have a pretty sweet job. Well, normally, but that made me want to do what you were doing. Like it was truly inspiring, and I mean, like, what can you just explain? What was your job when you were in which island were you on to start with?
I was based on St. Martin, and St. Martin is well known for its divide between the French side and the Dutch side. Everyone was thinking that I would go to the Dutch side because I'm from Holland, but no, I got a job offer on the French side. And last summer in the Netherlands, I was working as a scenic flight pilot and as a skydive pilot in my local hometown of Hilversum, working for Paracenter Midden-Nederland, which was a lot of fun. And I was building hours, and I knew that the winter was coming, of a few months of not doing the flying that I love, and I really enjoy being in a sunny place with a nice weather. So my season on Texel, where I was doing the scenic flights, ended in the first week of November, and coming up to the end of the year, I thought, oh wow, I won't have a job as a scenic flight pilot, and skydiving doesn't happen that much in the winter either. I need to find a job that I can go somewhere exciting. And people tend to forget that most of the Caribbean islands have the regulations of EASA or FAA. And for me, what turned out really well is I just sent an email to every skydive center in the Caribbean that had EASA registered aircraft and said, hey, can I work for you? I have this many hours, this much experience as a skydive pilot. Please let me come. And I got a few replies. And I was really, really excited to hear that I could fly the 206 in St. Martin. I'd never been in the Caribbean. So it seemed like quite the adventure. And like a few months later, after I had signed the contract, I was in the Caribbean. So it was really nice.
Yeah, it sounds kind of neat. Like this, yeah. First of all, guys, before we continue, I see there's a lot of super chat questions here. We will be answering them, but we will continue with the interview as we go, and then I'll chug through the questions later on. But I have to say, Rosita, like I would think twice if someone called me now and said, "Listen, you can come and fly the Cessna 206 in the Caribbean." I would consider it. Like I would, because the lifestyle seems incredible. Is it as nice as it looks?
It was amazing. I mean, watching back my own video, which I make myself do sometimes just to remind myself of what a crazy experience it was. It really was waking up. Some days I start at 11 or 1, sometimes earlier at 9, and go for a swim, have breakfast, file a flight plan, and prepare the plane. And I was the only pilot there, so I had all the freedom. I knew that the plane was well taken care of. Prepared everything, did some flights, and then the day ended with a sunset. And I had a car there and a nice accommodation. So it was just like a big holiday, actually, with some work, which was actually just my passion, flying. I have to say, and
oh, there's gonna be a lot of people hating you right now. Like that is like, yeah, that's exactly my experience of our building. That is, I also went to an exotic island and flew and had accommodation and a car and doing what I loved.
But I'm gonna tell you now. I will tell you now the downside, but I try to keep it very positive. Downside was very unstable cash flow and very unstable working hours. I mean, I went there with the intention of doing the flight hours that I do in Holland. So have full days of maybe 6-7 hours of flying. Well, it was not the case there. I had days that I did one load, so one rotation. That was it. And if you're being paid per rotation that you fly, then days of 10, 15 rotations is really good. But of one, you can't really live from that.
But that was the accommodation part of the deal, so that you actually were staying there. So that it's basically you had to pay for your food.
Yeah. So I was really lucky. My accommodation was paid for, but I was paid per load that I was flying, and I had days that I wasn't flying because there was just no jumpers.
Yeah.
So I actually one time I had a really slow month, and I had a few days of not dropping any skydivers. And the island is expensive. Personally, from my experience, the food was expensive. Everything's imported. It's very tourist oriented. So I found it quite an expensive life there. But I couldn't complain because I was having this beautiful experience. But for people that want to have it as a full-time thing and really have to rely on the money that you earn there, it isn't something that you can rely on earning a lot of money there. So that was the downside.
But
yeah.
did you kind of come out on the even side, or did you actually have to end up paying money for being there?
It was like break even. I didn't have to put any money towards it. I kind of earned back. I did have to pay my ticket down there myself, but I earned that back. And yeah, I didn't need very much there. I mean, had some good food, some laughs, friends over, so it was good.
Oh yeah, no, it sounds great. Like it does, because there is a lot of ways that you can build hours, and this is also a question that I get quite often. And I mean, in Sweden, when I was trying to build hours myself, there was things like flying fire surveillance, for example, during the summer, especially because there's a lot of forest fires up in Sweden, pulling sailplanes or pulling gliders. And parachuting, working with parachuting clubs, but there was never any talk about any money then. Like you wouldn't be paid, you would be paid in flight hours. So to actually get paid and to be staying in a paradise like that and getting the kind of experience that you got, sounds quite reasonable, to be honest, because like what you're looking into and what you're saying that you're working up against will require an enormous amount of resilience. And being able to sort out different situations, working with different people. And I saw that on your first video, like, yeah, well, now we're going to be ripping up this seat and we're going to put this up so that the tail doesn't blow off. And we're going to do these kind of things. And that's really what it's going to be about. It's different than for us, taking our flight bags, putting it next to the seats and pushing out. They're different. Like there are some really, really hard things with that as well. But this is a completely different type of life.
Yeah.
So
I think that a lot of, like you said, a lot of people might be thinking, wow, it was such a paradise, which it was, but it's kind of the price, what you earn from all the hard work of you go somewhere where you don't know anybody. You kind of have to just wait and see how it all goes. I had some problems. The aircraft had to be in maintenance. So there's a lot of uncertainty, but for me personally, I think those things are what adventure should be like. And yeah, so that made it all worth it, you know?
Absolutely. No, it sounds awesome, and from what I could see, you were having a blast when you were doing it as well. So cool. So what's the plan now then? How much hours did you managed to accrue up until now?
I think now I'm at about 650 or 660 hours. So it went quickly the last 1.5 year. Last summer I did like 220 hours on a Cessna 172 just with scenic flights. So long days.
Yeah.
Um, starting work at 10 and then or 9 and then ending at the end of the day just doing 10 to 20 minute flights, scenic flights over the same island. So that was nice. But yeah, about just over 650 hours now. Yeah.
Cool. And what's the target? Is there like what if you got to choose your dream job, what would that be, and how much hours do you need to apply for it?
For the company that I would like to work for, the nonprofit, I think they require about 1,000 hours total time, but they really focus on having turbine hours. So I'm working towards, I was going to work towards getting my turbine rating on the Cessna Caravan or the Super Van. That was supposed to start in April this year, but due to Corona, that has all been postponed, unfortunately, because the company that I want to work for, yeah, they have other things on their mind right now, of course.
Of course.
So that was my plan: get my turbine rating, work towards 1,000 hours, and I wanted to have at least 50 hours on type. But if I would do a full skydive season this year, then I would have 200 hours on type by the end of the summer, and then I could start working for the nonprofit. Oh, and actually, I also need to get my instrument rating because I'm doing a complete modular training. So the full instrument rating I still need to do.
Okay. Do you have your multi-engine rating?
No, I only have my single engine piston VFR CPL.
Okay. So is that like this non-profit, or do they need multi-engine ratings as well?
Not yet. They work primarily on the Cessna Caravan, and that's kind of how I want to build it up. Work for them for some time, and then get really comfortable on the Caravan, fly it for some year or for maybe 2 years, and then I can work towards getting my multi-engine if I really have the fixed idea of which plane I want to fly next. Because obviously it is quite a big investment, especially if you're working for a nonprofit. Then you're not going to be earning so much money. So I want to make some smart decisions in that.
But how does it look long term then? Do you want to go in and work long term, non-profits, doing this as a career, or is there another thing that's on the horizon once you've done that for 10 years, let's say?
That's a really good question. I mean, I think I've been really fixated on this one goal, and I really want to achieve that first. And I think I see that now already with every new plane I learn how to fly and new adventure I go on. It opens so many new doors. So as soon as I get really comfortable in the Caravan, the work that you do as a nonprofit or for an NGO can be very flexible as well. For me, what would be perfect is to do a like 6 month kind of thing, that I work full time for an NGO for a few months, and then the other few months working, maybe doing some ferry flights that I'm getting into, or continuing as a skydive pilot. So kind of that thing.
Yeah.
And you never know. People ask me, do you want to go into the airlines? But maybe in a few years, like I'll see where it takes me, and I just want to experience it all.
Yeah. But it's true. Like, you're very different from me, because I was very focused on like, this is what I want to try to achieve. But I come into the same situation as you are in, which is when you've gotten to that point and you have reached a certain amount of hours and working for the airlines and stuff, then you have to ask yourself as well. I have to ask myself, okay, so what do I want to do? Yeah. Do I want to continue this for 25 years, or do I want to do something different? So this is I don't think it doesn't matter how far along you try to plan. And sometimes it's better to just let life kind of live with you and realize that it's the journey that really is what you're living for. That is what life is, really.
Would you want to kind of get back into general aviation or fly some piston aircraft again?
Yeah, I think so. I'm kind of torn because I have a family now. I have 2 young boys, and I have my wife, and all the life that comes with that. So me going away doing what you're doing is out of the question. But Taking up general aviation and flying piston again, yes. I have actually been talking to a flight school I know about potentially taking up my single pilot rating because I've lost that. Maybe because my kids are getting a bit older as well and they would like to go like you did with your dad, go out flying a bit. That would be cool. And I'm also really interested in what's coming up now when it comes to electric flights. And this flight school that I'm in contact with, awesome Flight Academy up in Sweden, they're actually like they bought I think 100 of these electric trainers. You know, the PPL, the one that was just now, the EASA just certified it. So they're going to be like launch customers for the electric trainers, and I'm really fascinated with that and what's coming out of it. So yes, I am, and I want to do that for the channel. There's a lot of things that I want to do with the channel as well that I haven't been able to do. Now I've been sitting and doing a lot of sofa explaining. I would love to be able to get out, and I can actually do that now. Like the channel is big enough for me to enable me to go out and do, maybe visit flight schools, maybe visit you, maybe see, like if you are in an NGO or a non-profit organization in a while, then it would be awesome to come down and see what you guys are doing, for example. I would love to be able to do those kind of videos because there's so much to the aviation world that is not just the airline world, and to have this platform is really cool. And which brings me also to what's your game when it comes to the platform, because you managed to grow in 4 months what took me a year and a half to do. So because you're at 33,000 subscribers I think at the moment.
I think 32, yeah.
Yeah, probably a few more after this, I'd say. But like, do you, because I could see that as a vehicle for you as well to be able to do a lot of good.
Yeah.
And to be able to show your journey to a lot of people who would like to see it. And is that kind of the idea that you had with starting the channel?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, my personal goal has always been to do humanitarian aid flying, but the other side of my passion is flying, and combining those two things is my dream. But I want to share all the adventures that I go on. I mean, I'll continue going on flying adventures, and I think having this platform to share it with other aviation enthusiasts or people that might be interested in following the same path, like how cool is it to have a platform where you can share your excitement about this? And I think that there's a lot of things that I have experienced or that I know about. I mean, gliding at such a young age, and I want to share that knowledge that I have. All the knowledge that has taken me years to accumulate, I want to share that on this platform. And like you said, having this platform to also kind of share my views on working for an organization that focuses on the well-being of people all over the world. Like, if I can show that to, or allow my following to join me on these adventures and learning about what's going on all like across the world, then that's really special for me for the humanitarian aid side. But for the flying side, I mean, we're all human and we all love doing great things. And I think if this platform will give me the chance to learn how to fly new planes, or to learn about new electric aircraft. I mean, I heard that the Cessna Caravan is coming out, or they're talking about the electric version. That is amazing, and I would love to kind of learn more about this and share it on my platform as well.
Yeah, now the Cessna Grand Caravan I think was flying for the first time just 2 weeks ago. It doesn't have a great range though. It has like 100 nautical mile range. So it's not, so it's kind of like, it'll need to be a little bit better than that, but definitely it's going the right way. Like, and for an organization like that, that would be awesome. Especially if you could in some way use solar panels or whatever to charge it. That would be really cool. Great. So I have a few questions here. I'm going to run them through because we've already been talking for almost an hour. So. Time flies when you're having fun. So I have some questions from my followers here who's asking me questions basically, and I'm going to be answering them once I've let Rosita go. And we have Crazy Uncle Bob has already subscribed to you without watching your channel, which is great. Carl Simmons, thank you very much for your support. That's very generous of you. So Florian Krabbe, would you recommend someone to start an ATPL training ab initio in these circumstances? I think that's for me as well, actually. How could the Airline Pilot Club help me? Cheers from Charlie. Okay, I'm going to talk about the Airline Pilot Club again after here. So this one is for you. Marwan Jacobi is asking, what would you advise or recommend aspiring pilots to improve their handling capability of stress handling, especially in situations with pressure and risk combined, which is something that you're probably going to be put under as well if you start working for non-profit organizations. What would you say? How do you work with stress management?
Before you fly, or
I'd say during your flight, probably if you come up against something that's unexpected. I guess you have as well when you've been flying parachuters.
Look, there's so much information available on the internet. A lot of cases of other pilots having a situation and not handling well. Whenever I go on a flight, I mean, for example, my flight on Tuesday, I'll be flying in a whole different airspace that I've never been in. You have to prepare yourself of things that you might encounter. So colder weather, high altitude, different airspace. How can you prepare yourself before you actually get there? Like, always be a few steps ahead, and you can prepare yourself well so that when you come into the situation, that you kind of have some bits left over that you can use for something that's really unexpected. So when I do flights, even with dropping skydivers, I always have a look where could I possibly land if I have an engine failure. You need to tell yourself that flying is a lot of fun, but you have to keep your mind, like, you need to have your mind there while you're doing it and be prepared for things that might go wrong. So if you're prepared for the flight that you do, you'll have way less stress in the moment because you're ready.
Yeah, no, that's what I keep telling people as well, that this is why we do so much training. And even if we look at this from an airline point of view, why we do so much continuous recurrent training as well, where we put people into these kind of situations and teach them how to deal with it through training, and also to show them, like, how did you react when this happened? Well, now you recognize that reaction, so now when that happens again, you'll be able to maybe do it in a slightly different way. And when people are asking, like, you need X amount of hours in order to do this job, we will only take on people who have this much hours. It is one way is to try to kind of have a smaller group of people to choose from, but a huge thing is your experience. Like, the more experience you get, the more you will be able to handle stuff that you haven't seen before, even if that experience does not include that particular thing that happens to you, that bird strike, engine failure, someone get tangled in your aircraft in the stabilizer. The fact that you have experience means that you will be able to focus more of your mind on the problem, because actually flying the aircraft and dealing with that is kind of in your backbone. It's something that you know already. So now you have a brain that's this big, and while you have when you have no experience, well, then you have about this much left in order to deal with it. When you have a lot of experience, well, then maybe you have this much left. That's kind of why this whole sector is so into experience, and that's why you need 1,000 hours to apply for your job.
And people I had the same at the beginning of my flight training. I thought, oh wow, I was struggling a lot with ATC with radio calls at the beginning, and now I get compliments of my radio work, and it's so funny. Experience really, like, throughout your flights, you'll learn from the mistakes that you've made, and the further you get into your flight training and your experience afterwards, the more space you'll have to think about things, because you learn from the mistakes you make, and you need to grow, and it's a learning process. So just in everything else.
Absolutely. So Michael Stern is asking, Rosita, you should try and get in touch with Dan Grider and fly with him on a skydive in his King Air.
Oh, I would love to fly the King Air. There's one based in Mosselbaai in South Africa, and it's so cool to see them fly with those. It's awesome.
Yeah, when I did for my current airline, in order to get in there, I needed to do an assessment. And at the time, my airline didn't do their own assessment. They had actually kind of given that out to a third party. So I went down to the Netherlands. I went down to Maastricht, and I did the testing over there. And I did the whole KLM test battery. So 2 days in the NAS trainer, and I did my actual sim check. I did on a King Air, which I'd never flown in my life, by the way. So
how was that?
Yeah, it was just like, okay, here's your King Air. We want you to fly from Amsterdam to Rotterdam. You're going to do this approach and stuff, and here's your plates. And Go fly. Yeah, but it was cool. It was, well, I mean, this is a simulator, so it wasn't that. It was like a Fresno, but it was an impressive aircraft anyway.
Yeah.
Grant Rennie, thank you very much. So let's see. Pranay Vardhan. Hello, Petra and Bambi. Bambi, how long did it take you to get your PPL?
Let me count. I don't have this on the top of my head. Okay, so basically there's a variety. Some people do it a lot shorter, some do it a lot longer. But I started in October 2016, and at the end of October, and I was in that like ab initio ATPL class. So I followed for the first 4 weeks I had to follow mandatory classes. And usually for PPL, it's quite different. You have a different setup of how that works. But I had to really follow that. And then I did my skill test in the end of February.
Ooh, that's very quick.
Yeah, so that was quite fast actually.
Yeah.
And I kind of pushed for that as well. I at our flight school at 43 Air School, you could choose your own like training hours. So you could say, okay, do you want to fly twice a day, once a day, or how many days a week do you want to fly? And I was just filling in everything. I wanted to fly twice a day, a 6 a.m. slot, and then a 4 p.m. slot. And the cool thing is at 43 Air School, you have like an instructor that you do most of your flight training with for certain parts. So for PPL, I had one instructor, Zane Hesselman. I loved having flying with him. And I think he was so frustrated with me because I was just every day as an 18-year-old, I was like, hello, I'm ready to fly.
Here I am again, but we just landed. Yes.
Yeah. So that's why it went quite fast, because I just flew almost every day.
Yeah, cool. So let's see. Marcus Langendorf is asking, hi Bambi, I also want to convert to an EASA PPL from an FAA PPL, but I currently have 98 hours. And maybe pursue a career with a CPL like you're doing. Is there anything you can recommend? Great live stream.
Thank you. Okay, 98 hours. I think I'm pretty sure that from FAA to EASA, it's also the 100-hour requirements. I'm not 100% sure, but I assume so because it's the same for ICAO. If you have 98 hours, you can do it. It might be a lot cheaper to just do those last 2 hours in the Netherlands. You can do dual with an instructor, or maybe one with an instructor, one solo, something like that. Then you only have to do 2 theoretical exams. I can recall that it was air law and human performance. And then you can convert your license to a EASA PPL. And then for the CPL or ATPL, you can do the online distance learning course like I did. The benefit is that you can kind of do it at your own pace. Some people want to do it really quickly or a bit longer, do it part-time, but you really have that freedom. The downside, however, is that you really have to motivate yourself and study quite a bit. But in the end, it is worth it because you can kind of fill in your own time schedule.
Yeah. No, absolutely. And I guess, I mean, you just contact any ATO and they will tell you also exactly what kind of, every ATO sets up. I think when you do a conversion like this, you need some kind of training plan. Or I think maybe that's when you come with a CPL actually, but I'm not sure for the PPL. But it's worth just giving them a call and saying, this is what I have. Yeah. What do you think I should do?
You can just go to flight schools and look up CPL, and they do the last modular part, which is only 25 hours if you're almost at the 200 hours. So yeah, that.
Cool. You see, this is great to have you here to answer these kind of questions, because I can only give them contact someone and talk to them. Yeah. Right. So we have gotten a super chat in SAR, in Zulu Alpha Romeo currency. Is that something you're familiar with? Yep.
The ZAR, that's the South African rand.
Yeah. Pilot Bambi should recognize this currency from a fellow pilot trained in South Africa. Thanks for the stream, Captain, and keeping us sharp. Well, woo. You're more than welcome. This is why I do this. I love these interviews are so fun because I get to talk to so many people from so many different backgrounds, and here, I mean, it really fills me with energy as well to hear from someone who is on like the beginning of the career, and the kind of light that's in your eye when you're talking about it. It's really, really nice to see. Les Chase is asking if you've ever seen any wildlife on the runways in South Africa.
all the time. There's a small airfield called Stanley's Island in South Africa. It's near Plettenberg Bay for the people that know, and it's literally just a grass strip on an island. You can only really land there with really light aircraft because their runway is a few hundred meters long, but they have zebras. I think they had 6, so you have to do a low pass to chase them off, but they're not that very scared, so you might have to do a second one and then land at the beginning and hope that they kind of move out of the way. So that happens. As a kid, my dad had to chase away elephants sometimes and all of that, so it's Africa. That happens.
Yeah. Yeah, well, cool, very cool. I think I've had a moose close to the runway up in northern Sweden. They do like these things can come. When I worked as an airport firefighter, we had to chase off wildlife from the runway. Sometimes they get through the fence, and once they're inside of the fence, then there's almost no way to get rid of them unless you get a local hunter to come up and take care of that, unfortunately, which was more often the case up there. But it happens. It's not only South Africa. It happens in Sweden. It happens everywhere. I had a friend of mine hit a what are they called? The you know the little spiky animals? Come on, what are they called? Hedgehog. Thank you. I had a friend of mine who hit a hedgehog at 500 feet climbing out of I think it was somewhere down in southern France. He came out of. Yeah, a hedgehog at 500 feet.
How does that? What?
Yeah. Yeah, you can imagine that report that he came down, and I met him in the crew room, and he's like, "Dude, I hit a hedgehog flying out of whatever it was down." What had happened? And what he told me was that this bird of prey, this eagle, had come down and grabbed the hedgehog. All right, flown away with the hedgehog. So you can think the hedgehog is having like the worst day there. He's like, "Oh," and so the eagle flew away. And then as they were taking off, obviously they have the landing lights on and everything. So the eagle got scared and released the hedgehog. So the hedgehog thought, "Woohoo!" And then like, by a 737.
That's fortunate.
Yeah, that might be officially the worst day ever for a hedgehog. I think the statistics of having that happening is very low. But you can hit, what I want to get to is that you can hit all sorts of things with aircraft. And you never know really when it's going to happen. So Marcus Langendorf is saying, "Thanks for the answer, guys." And then he's saying something in Dutch. Groetjes uit Boesem.
Groetjes uit Bussum. Groetjes uit Hilversum.
Groetje uit Boesem. That's as far as my Dutch will go.
Very close to where I'm from, by the way.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I'm guessing as much. So that's it. That's the super chat. I was going to see if there's anyone on the normal chat as well. That normally have some people who have some questions here. But I'm GNU strike. No, I haven't had any GNU strikes. Have you had any GNU strikes? No. And my instructor hit a moose once. Yeah, so this seems to be a common thing happening. Yeah, the bird did drop it. So, I wanted to ask you as well. What's your next thing? When are you flying again?
I'm actually flying on Tuesday. I have a ferry flight. I'm really excited for that. So I'm quite busy.
Yeah, I can imagine. So where are you flying from and to, and what are you flying?
I have a contract to ferry a American AG-5B Tiger. It's a small, low-wing aircraft. It's a piston aircraft. I'm flying it from Germany, from near Frankfurt, flying it all the way to Norway. So that's what I'll be doing on Tuesday, and it's really exciting because, I mean, it's such a crazy time to be working as a crew member. You're allowed to do these kind of flights, and it's kind of like traveling in a really strange time, but I can't wait. It's a part of airspace that I've never been to. I've never actually I've flown in Denmark, but I've never flown in Norway. And it's going to be a really fun cross country, and I'll hopefully be filming everything. So there's going to be a vlog coming soon.
Great plug.
Yeah.
Great plug. Good. Well done. But I have a few follow-up questions on that. How do you get a contract to do a ferry flight? Like, how does that even work?
Well, actually, I'm getting quite a few requests through the video that people have seen through YouTube. So, I mean, this platform has helped me tremendously. I think, I assume, and that's people have told me that through my videos, they can kind of see what my skill level is. They feel that they know me a bit more now. And I think a lot of people that buy aircrafts, basically most of the ferries are people that privately own an aircraft, sell it, and then need it to be transported to another area. And people come into contact with me and ask if I can do that for them. And my license is valid, my medical is still valid, so I'm able to fly in this time. And yeah, that's kind of just how it works. People kind of ask me to do this for them, and I obviously I'm like, yes, sure, of course.
But this also means then that you're going to be putting yourself in an aircraft that you've never flown before.
Yeah, this aircraft I haven't flown before. And since it falls under the single engine piston, it's similar to an aircraft that I have flown before and have quite a lot of time on. I'm now also under the insurance of the aircraft, and it really just requires a lot of beforehand reading. You need to know the POH, you need to prepare yourself for all of that. But that's also something that kind of comes with the ferry flying. Not all aircraft you've flown on before. So you have to do a lot of prepping.
Yeah. No, but this is awesome because it is the POH, by the way, is Pilot Operative Handbook.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, it does require. We were talking about resilience a little bit before, but it does require quite a lot of that, because to sit yourself down into an aircraft that you haven't flown, that you don't know the flying characteristics of, it does take a lot of preparation and a lot of risk management as well. Flying very, very carefully, fly carefully. And not pushing any boundaries, really. Just like, okay, I'm going to get this aircraft from A to B. These are the speeds I'm going to keep. This is how I'm going to do it. And I'm guessing it's not a complex aircraft, so it's not retractable gear or anything like that.
But it's fast. Yeah. It cruises like 135, 140 knots.
Really?
Yeah. So I mean, fast compared to
but that's awesome with a fixed gear.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oof.
So it flies fast, and like you said, there's quite some resilience. You have to really prepare yourself for something like this. Also, in the flight planning, I do take some safety precautions. It's an aircraft that I also don't know all the history of, so I don't want to fly long stretches over the sea. I'm bringing life vests, everything to just be 100% safe.
Yeah.
And you need to know a lot about your diversion airports, because it is a risk that you're taking.
Yeah.
You have to be in very good contact with the owner. You need to check all the paperwork beforehand. So it's been a long run of a lot of preparation the last week.
Very cool, very cool. I'm looking forward to see that video when it comes up. So let's see. A last question here from Rafael Martinho. Ask Mentor to forward you this contribution for the set rating. Long life caravan. Okay, I don't know, for the set rating.
The single engine turbine?
Yeah. Single engine turbine, of course. All right. I'll forward that to you. It's a super chat question, so he wants to forward it to help you out.
Oh, thank you so much. That's so kind. Thank you.
Yeah, or we'll do it like this, Rafael. Because I don't know how to send that, to be honest. But another thing that we could do as well, because I want to contribute as well toward it. Like, have you done any live streams yet on your channel?
No, I've been interviewed before on a live stream, but I haven't done one myself.
We should set up a live stream with me on your channel as well. That tends to work. Like,
I would love that. That's awesome.
Yeah, because I want to. I want to be invited to other YouTubers.
I will invite you, and we can talk about the ferry flight once I've completed it, and we can talk about your past and your flying goals and all of that. So
Exactly. That sounds great. Listen, I'm going to let you go because you've been on for over an hour now. Thank you very much for being here and answering your questions. Once again, guys, if you haven't already, you go down and check out Pilot Bambi on the link down here. Just search for it. It's going to be the first thing that jumps up from YouTube's algorithm by now. So best of luck with your channel. Best of luck, and fly very safely on your ferry flight on Tuesday. And I am sure that we are going to hear more from you in the future.
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you for everyone asking questions. It was an honor to be on your channel, and I mean, I had a lot of fun, so thank you.
Excellent. Listen, I'll send you a message on Skype when I finish, because I'm gonna stay on the live stream for a little while and answer some of the other questions here. But take care of yourself, and I'll talk to you later.
Yes. Bye bye.
Bye bye. Oh man, it is so nice. Like I know that I've gotten a lot of great good feedback from you guys about these live streams. And I thoroughly enjoy it. Like it's so nice to get to talk to other aviators from different experience grades, from different backgrounds. Now we've had everything from like very, very experienced senior fighter pilots in the U.S. Air Force and the to like someone like Rosita, which is just starting off on her journey, or well, actually she's gotten quite far. But I want to do more of this, and I want to interview more people. So if you guys have any more suggestions, then I'll be more than happy to try to pick up on that. Now I've gotten a lot of different suggestions, and I can't kind of check all of them, but if I see that there's a lot of people that ask for the same person, then this is definitely something I'm going to go for. So I'm going to go through the super chat questions here as well that would aim to me. Scott Lowry is the first one. So hi Petter, how do you feel now that you've been back in the sim, and do you have a date for when you will be back flying again? Yeah, like I hope that you guys saw my video that I did, which was, you know, when I was just about to go into the sim. Then I took a little bit of short videos inside of the sim, and then how I felt afterwards. And what I said there on that video is absolutely true. Like it felt almost unreal to get into the sim again when you haven't flown for 4 months. But then it's kind of like riding a bicycle. You sit in there, all of a sudden you're flying a manually handled ILS approach with 33 knots crosswind. I got an engine failure after takeoff. I did a non-precision RNAV approach leading into a circling approach, and I got an engine failure on the turn-in on the circling approach, and I landed off that one with flaps 40, which is very unusual. I don't think I've even done that previously. And it comes back to you very quickly. Now, what I do notice, though, which is kind of funny, is that I've reverted back to the very first thing that I learned. All right, so like the first types of SOPs that I did prior to any add-ons. And remember that as an airline pilot, you get more and more procedures added on to you as you go on. I started off with a fairly easy set of SOPs, and then the airline kind of learns, and then you get more like, no, you need to do this as well, and then you need to do that, and you need to change this a little bit. And what I've noticed now is that after 4 months, and I got back flying, all of a sudden I forgot to put like the range rings into the FMC when I set up for the approach, which is something that I've done for 10 years. But I didn't do it for my first kind of 8 years, so I forgot about it. And there was something else as well, like a call out I think I made that I haven't done for 10 years because it's been gone. So it just shows that when you become rusty, you kind of revert back to what you really learned from the beginning. And then all the other add-ons, you're going to have to kind of like get yourself back in remembering. So yeah, it was really fun. It was really fun. And it looks like we're going to be back flying in July at a limited pace. So I have on my roster some flights now. Now, whether or not I will be doing them, or there's still a little bit of debate about that, but it looks like from like the second week, maybe the first week even, or the second week of July, I will be back flying a little bit again, which I'm really looking forward to. Cool. So Florian Krabbe is asking, would you recommend someone to start an ATPL training ab initio in these circumstances, or how could the Airline Pilot Club help me? Cheers from Chalwa. Okay, so I want to take this opportunity now to talk a little bit about the Airline Pilot Club. First of all, you have to look at the situation now, and then you have to try to project it into the future. Now, the last few months, that has been impossible to do because no one knew what was happening. But now you're starting to see how this post-COVID world is going to look. You can look at what's happening in China. They have been up flying for a while now. They haven't closed down, even though there's been some new kind of COVID outbreaks. They haven't closed it down completely, and that's a very, very good indication. Also, we're looking at Europe, and everything points to Europe opening up completely now around next week. So there will be flights in between European countries, there will be domestic flights, and it looks like the bookings are very healthy. There's a lot of bookings going on, which means that it's possible that people are not as afraid of flying as were predicted, that people much more want to fly, and that these really protective efforts that the airlines have gone up with, that everyone needs to have masks, limited service, temperature checks before you get into the airport, stuff like that, is actually working. And if that's the case, it means that we are going to see a normalization of airline flights within Europe. Maybe during this year, we're not going to get up to where we were, but maybe next summer we'll be back up. And then it's going to be pushing again. And why is this important? Well, this is important because if you start your integrated training now, you will be done in about 2 to 2.5 years. Well, around 2 years from now. So this means that in 2023, in the summer, then maybe even 2022 in the summer, you will have your licenses ready. And then you should always count on at least 6 months to a year with looking for a job before you get called for your first interview. So that brings you into 2023, all right? 2023, I think that we are going to be pumping again. I think that the airline world is going to look different, as in I think that there's going to be some airlines are going to be much stronger, some airlines will not be there anymore, but I do think that we're going to be stronger. And I also think that there's going to be a need for pilots. And the reason I think so is because a lot of people, the baby boomers, is a huge generation. I don't think that they necessarily, the ones that get fired now or go furloughed, and they might not even try to get back in. They will just say, I call it quits now. I'm not going to do another type rating or learn another SOP. I'm just going to pre-retire myself at 60 or at 57 or whatever they are. So if that happens, it means that there's going to be a lower amount of total pilots available. And then there's going to be a surge of need for pilots as these other airlines that are benefiting from this are going to start rising up and expanding. So yeah, I think that if you wait another month or so, look a little bit how the trajectory is looking for the coming, like towards the end of the summer, you should have a good indication of how things are looking. And then, yes, then I think it will be good. You always need to be careful here, and you need to make sure that you can take funding. And like I said, count on at least a year without a job after you finish your training. But if you can do that and you can sustain yourself economically, then yes. Now, the Airline Pilot Club, we started because, like, if you completely disregard COVID-19, the premises that we started on about a year ago was that we saw that this huge bunch of baby boomers was going to go into retirement. We also saw that there was a backlog of a lot of aircraft that needs to go, and you could very easily calculate how many pilots were needed. And there wasn't enough. Like, no matter if we took every single one of the pilots that have money out there or have parents with money, we just couldn't find the talent, right? Because you need to have the best pilots. You need to have not the richest ones. You need to have the ones that are more suited. And we couldn't, like, there was no way of finding that. So me and Andy, we looked at that and said, we need to find right people, all right? And we need to try to fund them. So our goal was to try to help people realize that they have what it takes to become pilots, hence the indicative assessment, which we have, and it's finished and it's ready. And then we will try to fund them. Now, the unsecured part of the funding, that was what we were going for initially, which is where you, if you had done the two different assessments that you're going to need to go through, and you were going to a specific school that we had quality controlled, that will be enough for the banks to lend you money. That is now gone. All right. The reason for that is that the banks are very risk aware, and they're seeing right now they can't look into the future and see how big the need will be, which means that they're playing it safe. So you'll still be getting access to secured funding in one way or another. Right, you need some kind of security, which is the way that it has been before. But the flight schools that we will be working with will have financing deals available in one way or another. Now, this doesn't mean that this is dead, right? It only means that right now it is not feasible to do exactly the unsecured part of funding. But everything else that we promise in the Airline Pilot Club, the indicative assessment, which is a great thing for you and for your parents to see that you actually have what it takes and give guidance on what you need to prepare and do in order to improve towards being ready, that will be available as part of being an APC member. The schools, we are still working to find the best possible schools. We're talking to schools continuously. We are, checking out the ones that are interested. Is going to get a visit from our team of very experienced experts that will look at the school and saying that, yes, this is good enough. They have the curriculum that's good. They have the instructors that are good, the flight, the aircraft that are good. And they also have the finances, right, to be part of this ecosystem. That will still be there. There will not be a lot of schools in the beginning, obviously, but as we keep expanding, there's going to be more and more of them. the insurance products, which is something that we have negotiated through our partners that will help you when you start your training to get an insurance product to help in case something happens during training, right? Physically, mentally, and a few other things is going to be covered by this product and will pay back the money that you have invested if something happens to you that's covered by this insurance. This will also be available for the members of the Airline Pilot Club. There's going to be the guidance from me, and there's going to be club member benefits. There's going to be English language courses. It's going to be discounts on stores, for example, where you want to buy pilot stuff. All of this is going to be part of the membership, and the membership will start. We are aiming at starting in August to take in members. So all of you who have signed up, this is still available to you. We are going to give you as much support as we possibly can through the Airline Pilot Club. So that's where we stand now. If your sole interest in the club was getting unsecured funding, that is not going to be available right now. It might be in a year or so when the banks see that there's still a huge need for qualified pilots, but we have to be realistic here as well, right? So that's where we are. I hope that answers your questions. And feel free, like if you want to have, or if you have questions about this and you want to know how we're thinking, what we do, you go to the airlinepilotclub.com, you register there, and you can ask questions there. And Andy is, like Andy O'Shea, a hugely experienced co-founder that I have, ex-head of training of Ryanair. He'll be answering to the best of his capability. All right, I will be answering as well, and the rest of the team as well. But we are there. We're there to help. Okay. Cool. Let's see. So we talked about handling stress. We've already covered that. The Pod 24. How is the 737 auto throttle in gusty conditions? Does it chase the airspeed a lot, or is it pretty stable? Do you sometimes have to override it if it does? It's actually very good. Like the autopilot on the 737 is very good. Now, if you have huge speed kind of changes, so you have the kind of turbulence that gives you, or gusty conditions that gives you a lot of speed changes, then yes, then can start to kind of, but it's not built to go chasing it. It does fairly small corrections to keep the speed within a kind of set value. But sometimes, especially on approach, and very rarely we disconnect the auto throttle when we're not on approach. We just sometimes help it if you see that we're about to overspeed, for example. You might have to override the servos a little bit to take off a little bit of thrust. You have to be careful not to bring it back too much at cruise altitude, because it takes a long time for it to come back up again. But sometimes you have to help a little bit. But normally, if you're doing a really gusty approach, we tend to disconnect both the autopilot and auto throttle at a fairly early stage, so you get the manual handling for it and you feel the aircraft. And one of the things that I practice a lot with my cadets is not to chase the airspeed then, to know approximately what kind of thrust setting you should have, set that and let the speed vary, and only do changes if there's any huge changes to the airspeed. Because remember, on the 737, anytime that you change the thrust, you're going to get a change in pitch as well. So, you'll be sitting like this otherwise, and it's hard to handle it that way. Okay, cool. We missed how she got her nickname Bambi. Yeah, I know that now. I don't think that was a bit of a private story that Rosita had. It was from her childhood. So I didn't want to ask her that actually, but it's a very cool story. It's something that's been sticking with her from when she was a little child, basically. So that's where it comes from. Good, guys, that's it. That's almost 1.5 hours. Petra Olsson, thank you very much for a great live. That's great to hear. I'm really happy and stoked that you guys like these kind of live streams. How many reasonable malfunctions do you brief? From Harlan Andersson. We only brief the most severe ones. Like on the first flight of the day, we go through what happens if you have an engine failure on the ground after V1. And we go through that just to have that clear. Now, we don't brief any other malfunctions because they all have specific procedures to follow. And they all, like the pilot flying as state malfunction, the pilot monitoring checks what the malfunction is, states it, the pilot flying kind of checks and agrees, and then there's a call for a checklist, and you go on to it's the same, no matter what the failure is, providing that it doesn't have handling issues. We treat most failures exactly the same. Some of them have memory items that needs to be done quickly. Most of them do not. but you will handle these failures in exactly the same way. So there's no need to go and brief, well, okay, so what if you have a hydraulic failure? What if you have an electrical bus off? You know, there's no need for it really. But the engine failure after takeoff, you need to brief so that you have an idea of how am I going to deal with it? Where are we going to go? Do we need a takeoff alternate, for example? Things like that. Cool. And with that bombshell, guys, I want to say a huge thank you to all of you who have been watching this live stream. I hope that you've enjoyed it. And yeah, we'll see. You'll notice now, guys, that I'm going to start slowing down the channel. Probably won't be in a live stream more this week. There's going to be a video on Friday, obviously. I think that July is going to be completely off. Like, I'm going to stop. I'm not going to do more than maybe one or maybe two. We'll see, depending if something happens, obviously. But I'm not going to plan to do much videos in July to try to kind of recharge the batteries and then go head on into the autumn with you guys as I've started to fly again, when there's more stuff that I can talk about on the channel. So don't be alarmed if you don't see anything from Mentour Pilot coming up. Please continue to follow the channel and tell your friends to subscribe to it. There will be a lot of technical stuff coming up, a lot of explanation stuff coming up. So that's it. Marcus Langendorf, thank you very much for your support of the channel and have a fantastic day. Take care of yourself. Bye-bye.